Welcome to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and we're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we discuss a broad range of issues related to pets on this show. We also have a special guest tonight, and I'm going to ask Dr. Rogers to introduce him for us, if you would,
Thank you
please.
very much. Yeah, tonight I have a colleague, Dr. Barry Stuart, who is an exotic animal person. He does a lot of exotic animals, which include reptiles and birds and mammals, but also he has a farm. And so this is the sort of the Dr. Dolittle, James Herriot of the veterinary world. Most of us don't get that involved. And so I thought it would be interesting to take a little sidestep from our public health issues to discuss with Dr. Stuart what he does on his farm and then what he does in his clinic. And so, Mr. Horton, please.
Well, let's start off by asking you, where did you get your medical education?
Oh, well, I graduated from veterinary school in Iowa State University. And then,
Surrounded by farms.
So surrounded by farms. It's primarily a pig and a pig, swine and a beef state. So I got a lot of large animal experience over there, as well as all the traditional pets that we end up
But
seeing.
you told me before the show began that you did not grow up anywhere near a farm. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. So, and then I did most of my schooling in Staten Island and went to Brooklyn College. So, kind of stayed in a very urban, kind of setting without anything larger than a hamster and a dog.
How long have you been a veterinarian now?
I graduated in 1993, so it's been a long haul. So it's very, 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 very long time in veterinary medicine.
That indeed it is. Now, is farming a hobby or is it actually a profit-making enterprise for you?
Well, it's a profit-making thing that I'm starting off. So I've had the farm since about 1997. And we've had things like goats on it, and I just recently added chickens, and then we also board horses and stuff like that. So it's mainly a profitable, trying to make it as profitable as possible.
I understand that you have quite a few laying hens.
Yes, we have about 150 laying hens.
Oh my heavens!
Yes,
that's egg production.
Yes, a lot of egg production. We have about 7 or 8 different breeds of chickens. Ranging from some like Polish Lances to the Rhode Island Reds, to Red Rangers, to Black Stars, all the different kinds of species, and they lay a slew of different kinds of eggs. Everything from a dark brown to we also have Leghorns, so they lay the white eggs. So we also have ducks, and we end up getting duck eggs from them too. They happen to be both females, which is good. And then as you can see, we do have a large different variety of different colored eggs. We also recently started having some multiple colored eggs, from our Easter egg, birds that we call them. So the Americunas, which actually lay green and blue, blue eggs and so forth.
No kidding.
Yep, for real.
But I think it's interesting, I think it's interesting to note that you get these as chicks and raise them as chicks. You don't get adult laying hens. You get them as chicks.
Well, they're fun, and they teach the kids, because I have 2 children, and my girlfriend has 3. So we end up we like kind of the experience of raising these things from babies. So we got them originally as chicks, and then it's a matter of just cultivating them, waiting until they're laying age, and then basically now we're starting to actually produce a lot of eggs. So. We usually, on a daily basis, we're getting between 60 and 80 eggs, if not more. So
tell me now, I always thought it was a bit of a myth, but is there an actual taste difference between a brown and a white egg?
There's actually, it's not so much difference between brown and brown and white. There's actually a difference between farm fresh or store bought eggs. Most of the store bought eggs, a lot of them are 30, 40 days old, and they've gotten a lot of chance to separate from the shells, and the taste actually changes. The ones that I'm raising at my farm are actually farm fresh, so they're actually pastured. It's all natural, organic, so they're getting a much better diet. They're eating what comes naturally to them, and there is actually a nice difference in taste. There's also a difference in color of the yolk, and and there is a difference in how healthy they are for you.
And the first thing I noticed when I was looking at those eggs, because I got some from Barry, those eggs, the shells are thicker. When you just go to break the egg, the shells are thicker than the ones you buy in the store. And it's just interesting that people don't realize where eggs come from. They think you ask a child today, where do you get eggs? Oh, well, you go to the local store and you buy them. And I think this is interesting, which is why I'm so pleased that Dr. Stuart came on today.
Is running that farm a hobby for you?
It's a hobby, but but a lot of times it turns out to be almost like a full-time profession. So there's a lot of things that as Dr. Rogers, when he came over, saw that there was a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of building going on. We were doing shelters, making sure that they're feeding, making sure they have adequate shelter and proper nutrition. So. It started off as a hobby, but it definitely is a second job.
And then there's all the veterinary end of it, making sure that they're healthy and getting the proper, not only proper nutrition, but proper vaccinations for your horses and the other animals.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you take care of the veterinary need for your horses and that sort of thing all by yourself?
Yeah, most of the time the veterinary care, I'm taking care of the horses, the vaccinations, the dewormings, some of the testing that goes on. And I'm not an equine vet. There's a lot of other equipment that's involved in it. So if there's anything beyond what I can do, there are local equine vets that I'll call in to give a hand and do some things. We also have the farrier down there, and they trim the hooves up and they make sure that they stay nice and healthy.
Mm-hmm. And you also have goats.
And we have goats. We actually goats were one of the first things I started off with. It's a nice little hobby. We have some of the really small little goats, Nubian goats. In the past, as I talked to Dr. Rogers, we had fainting goats, and it's nice because we actually raise them, and actually I sell them as pets. So because they never really get over like 40 pounds. They usually stay nice and small. It's interesting because my kids love them. They like when they're little babies because they can grab them up and hold them. Right now, we actually have one that was actually doing really poorly, and we ended up hand raising it right from the start. And she follows my kids around like a little dog. So we call her Cinnamon, and she's basically another part of the family now. So.
Do you milk them?
No, actually, we just keep them as pets. There's no, we don't do the milking. Although, if we were, we probably could. But we mainly keep them as pets. So they make good pets. There's a lot of people that actually like to have goats as pets. It's a non-traditional pet, but but they definitely enjoy it. It's different than a dog or a cat, or it's different than a hamster or a gerbil. So.
Do you keep them in the house when people have them as pets?
Most people that actually purchase them end up keeping them as mostly inside pets.
You're kidding.
I'm very serious. A goat. We actually at my veterinary hospital, we actually have people that have pot-bellied pigs. We have clients that sleep with their pigs. It's like in the same bed. So it's because they're almost like a dog. So
I would think a goat would eat you out of house and home.
Yeah, they definitely get into a lot of things, and they definitely like chewing on everything. But they are definitely fun to deal with, and they are interesting pets, and they do have personalities of their own. It's like having a dog or a cat.
And so there are goats that have wool or not wool, but hair that you can harvest. And that's not something. Is that even considered in New Jersey beyond you?
Yeah, there are places that have goats that are shown they show them for showing them. They also use their hair. There are places that use them for meat. Okay, there's also places that use them for milk. So it's like unfortunately, it's like I'm just really into it as a pet. I'm not looking into it as something to have to shave them down or have to sell their milk products. Work. Yeah, I'm basically they're pets. They're nice little pets because they stay small. Most of those milk breeds and the meat breeds are much bigger, and they're really not good pets.
Right.
So how did you gain the knowledge to be able to do farm animals and pets and all across the board? That's not something that they teach you in veterinary school, is it?
No, actually, it's not. You have to really want to have a desire to do, to work with exotic pets, and there's a lot of self-training. There's a lot of seminars. There's also working at places that do a lot of exotic pets, and I did some internships. I was at the Bronx Zoo for a while. I was actually in one of the more pristine places in Chicago that deals with exotic pets. So I had a nice exposure to a lot of exotic pets in the past, and I like doing them. I like being the Dr. Dolittle of pets.
And actually, having gone through veterinary medicine, I recognize that we are taught about all these species, whether it was in my veterinary school or my post-veterinary school experience, we are taught. But you really have to continue using that knowledge to be able to follow through, and that's what's impressive about Dr. Stuart. I had all that knowledge when I graduated, and unfortunately I haven't seen a horse since I graduated. And even though I've worked with cattle and I've worked with goats, it's like a foreign language. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so that's one of the advantages that we have as veterinarians. We do have the basis for everything, but once you leave school, that basis slowly erodes if you don't use everything you've learned. And often it's quite hard to find internships or residencies that allow you to do mixed practice or even exotics.
Well, turning to exotics, sketch out for me, if you would, please, what an exotic consists of. Boa constrictors, alligators, turtles, what?
Yeah, exotics are, we in veterinary medicine, we break everything down to large animal, small animal, and exotics. And large animal being your horses, your cows, your pigs, your sheep and goats. Your small animals is considered your dogs and cats, and then your exotics are considered your birds, your rodents, such as your hamsters, your guinea pigs, your chinchillas, your rats. You have the different kinds of mammals, such as like your sugar gliders and your hedgehogs, and then you also have your reptiles like your turtles, your tortoises, and your snakes and your lizards. So geckos and bearded dragons and iguanas, and I see pretty much most of those in my practice. Along with, we do have potbelly pig owners. We do stuff with the 4-H, with the goats, that they show at the 4-H fairs. We do have a large number of potbelly pig owners. So these are the non-traditional pets, and even though a pig is considered a large animal, we actually consider it more an exotic because we do them and we treat them like unlike farm animals, we treat them like a dog or a cat, with the same kind of care. We use the same medications that we would use on these exotic pets. We practice pain medication. Our level of sensitivity is identical to what you do in human medicine. So, and that's the same thing. And over the years, it's gotten better and better for dogs and cats. And in exotic pets, it's always been a must because they tend to be a little less hardy than the dogs or cats. And pain is a big process which can actually make something that has a poor prognosis into something that's very good and great prognosis just by practicing the same kind of quality of care that we do on dogs, cats, and people.
Basically by relieving the care, by relieving the pain.
Yeah.
It really helps.
Okay, well, we have to take a break here briefly, but I would like to ask just quickly, do you actually do surgery on exotics?
Well, we do a lot of surgery. We do surgery on snakes. We do surgery on iguanas, on ferrets, hedgehogs, and we do mass removals, tumor removals. We do some other kinds of surgeries like ferrets. We do adrenalectomies. I tend to do most things in my practice with the exception of orthopedics. And orthopedics, I usually just do splinting, but we do most of the internal medicine on these guys.
Okay. Well, we've got to take a break. This is You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. We'll be right back.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Welcome back to You and Your Pets. We're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers, and our special guest. And I'd like to change now our focus to the veterinary clinic and the treatment of pets and exotic and pocket pets. And Dr. Rogers, will you take over at this point?
Certainly.
And carry on this section?
Thank you very much. Again, Dr. Stuart is a a colleague and a guest, and he is from Bridgewater, where his clinic is, and I have referred to him. Many people I've referred to him, and his veterinary clinic is called Advanced Care Veterinary Hospital on Route 22 in Bridgewater. And one of the reasons why I refer to Dr. Stuart is because often when you do clinical medicine in exotics, you need some very specific instrumentation, or you need instrumentation that allows you to take a drop of blood and analyze it rather than 3 milliliters or 5 milliliters of blood and analyze it. And so when I refer to Dr. Stuart, it's usually something that I'm either very allergic to or something that I have no idea that's going on. So Dr. Stuart, please tell me, what consists of the kind of medical problems that you see generally in exotics?
Well, we see a lot of respiratory problems. We see a lot of pneumonias, a lot of upper respiratory problems, a lot of sinus infections. We end up seeing a lot of intestinal problems, diarrhea. We end up seeing a lot of cancers and tumors. We end up seeing a lot of parasites. More parasites than we would normally see in the dogs and cats that we see. But we do see a large fair share of them. And sometimes they're not the traditional parasites that you remember when you graduated vet school and you forgot all the stuff. We see a huge amount of Giardia, huge amounts of Trichomonas, a huge amount of entamoeba. We see just all these parasites that most people remember from vet school and but never see them. So we end up seeing a lot of them. We end up seeing a lot of cancers in these pets. A lot of kidney problems. We end up with a lot of liver problems, and just about anything that walks in the door. We usually try to find out what the problem is to try to make the pet better. Because we want to improve that human-animal bond, and we want to basically make these exotic pets live a nice long lifespan like they should and they would in the wild.
Now, in general, the exotic pets live less time than a dog or a cat. And certainly most of them, I guess, except maybe a tortoise, would live much less than what a human lives. So when we're generally talking about the human-animal bond, because you brought it up, how do you prepare your clients to know that their rat is going to live 4 to 5 years, not 7 to 20 or 7 to 10?
Well, a lot of times in a routine exam that we do on them, sometimes we try to get them in for just general health checkups, just because we want to get them, and we want to get the people started on the proper care and husbandry so that they take care of them properly so that they last a lot longer. And we do explain the average lifespans. Hamsters, 2-3 years of age. Mice can sometimes live 5 and 6. Chinchillas can live up to 15. Right. And some of the birds that we end up seeing, that we see over like palm cockatoos and other things like that can last 50, 60 years. Right. And sometimes we do have clients that come in thinking that their parrot, their Amazon parrot that they just bought, brand new, is they're gonna live only a couple of years. And then when they find out that they themselves are in their 60s, that they find out that the parrot has a lifespan of 45 to 50 years, they said, oh, I didn't know that they were supposed to last that long. And now they start making up their will and saying, okay, I'm going to leave it to my son, my daughter, my cousin. Yeah, exactly. It's like, some of the species that they have actually sometimes last longer than they expect. So we do go over, a lot of times that's a big question that we get is how long it's going to live, or they get misinformation from the pet store that say that, the bird is going to live for 25, 30 years, and then they find out that it's only going to be 10.
Right, because it's older.
Because it's older, or because that's the lifespan is not that high.
Right. Well, it's interesting, and one of the things that unfortunately takes our pets from us that I see in practice in dogs and cats, and I occasionally see a rat and a mouse, is tumors. And we have a situation here where it looks like as if you're about to do surgery on this little rat. And we can see that there's a bit of a tumor there. So just tell me what this little fella came in for and how it resolved. Yeah,
well, this rat came in because he had a large tumor that was developing, and it was developing in a very short period of time. Luckily for rats, most of the tumors, 90% of the tumors are usually turn out to be benign tumors. So it was a tumor that was getting in the way, and it was bothering the rat, and the owner just didn't want to see them suffer because they love their pet, because this is their pet. Like a person has a dog or a cat or a child, this was their child. So they elected to do the surgery. We ended up hooking it up to all the monitors. Like you see those little clips. We actually have an ECG monitor on this pet. We're actually physically looking at it breathe. We're watching it breathe. We're listening to heart rates. And then we removed the tumor, and then we sutured it up, and the animal went home later on that day and did fantastic. We started at the recheck a week later, and it was doing fantastic. The owner was extremely happy with the fact that his rat doesn't have to run around with a big tumor on it.
Right. So we also have a post-op picture with 2 little incisions, and they healed well, and rats heal fairly well.
They heal very well. So a week later, the rat was running around like normal. Was eating and drinking, never had any problems. We use pain medications, we use, antibiotics to prevent infection. So we would treat it just as if we were going to treat a human or treat a dog or a cat.
Right. Now, I do know that reptiles are a little bit different. The skin of a snake has to be everted when you suture it because it doesn't heal correctly. I do remember some things from school. And so exotics tend to be very different. In terms of the way they're treated medically or surgically compared to dogs and cats, and humans for that matter. Now, you also see birds. So what I have here is a bird that, and I don't know, why did this little fella come in?
Well, this little bird came in for feather picking. What we can't see is actually his chest, which is actually bald. And there's a lot of different reasons for feather picking in birds. Sometimes it's boredom. Sometimes it's from kidney issues and liver issues. Sometimes it's from thyroid problems and parasites. So there's a lot of different reasons for it. And a lot of times we have to explore a little bit, into that. So that's why the bird was actually inside a cage, because we were getting prepared to draw a blood sample from him and to run it and check him for for anything that's going on with his liver, his kidneys, check some of the other problems that we could potentially pick up on blood work. So. Right. We see birds for a large number of reasons, including feather picking as one of the major ones.
Right.
But we also see them for respiratory problems, and we see them for intestinal problems, and we see them for bumblefoot and injured wings and injured legs, and people don't realize that they have to sometimes contain them a little bit. Right. Then they end up getting out and they end up hurting themselves.
Right. And then how did this guy end up doing?
This guy actually did pretty good. We got him on some medications that were just like equivalent to Prozac in people, and we actually, it was a behavioral picking, and he actually did pretty good and grew most of his feathers back, and while he's on the medication, he tends to pick a lot less, and is probably about a 90% improvement in the way he was, from the way he was.
And so one thing I remember from school is that a bird can look perfectly fine on the perch, be very, very sick, you pick it up and it dies in your hand. Yeah. So there are proper ways to handle animals, and I think you're showing us that here.
Yeah, this was a little bird that we're holding, and actually we're getting ready to take a blood sample from him. So we're stabilizing his head and so forth. So we're making it so that we don't get bit, that the pet feels nice and comfortable, that they're not squirming around and potentially hurting themselves. So there are proper ways of handling them, and myself and all my staff are trained how to properly handle them, so that we don't get ourselves hurt and we don't hurt the pets.
Right.
So.
And when they stress out, they can die.
Definitely. A lot of times with some of the smaller birds, we end up getting that problem, the finches, the canaries, and we really try to really handle them very minimally. So a lot of our exams are, a lot of times they tend to be more cursory, and you do what you need to do very quickly, and just to get them down, because the stress factor is a major, major thing with these guys. And if you hold them, sometimes pick them up and you can hold them for half a minute, and if you're just fumbling around and not knowing what you're doing, by the time you put them down, they're already expired.
Dead. Yeah. And so we have another bird, and this is a problem that I've actually seen. And this is, as you pointed out, it's a beak problem.
Yeah.
And beaks have to be trimmed, as do nails.
Yeah.
And so in this case, what can you tell me about this guy?
Well, this guy came in because he had a malocclusion. So what happened was that he had injured his beak, so his beak started growing a little longer on one side. So most of the time, birds will actually at the nail. A beak is like a nail, so it's going to constantly grow throughout their lifetime. As long as the bird is normal and healthy, the bird will normally shave down the beak, by itself. It'll just kind of grind it down with the lower part of the beak, and it'll actually shape it up. So what you're seeing right now, if you put a mark on the beak, you'd actually, in a couple of weeks, you'd see that mark, it actually migrates down to the tip.
Right.
So this bird, had a malocclusion, so he couldn't close his mouth 100% correctly,
Right.
so we end up overgrowing on one side. So what we have to do is we have to actually shape it up, and we have to take off the excess keratin that he normally would take off on his own. So we had to do it for him, and then this usually once or twice a year. A lot of times we'll have to get these guys back in again, and then we'll have to reshave the the dead keratin that's on his beak.
So basically, you use
Yeah.
a Dremel tool or a
We use-
little
yeah, we use-
high-speed
Yeah, we use
rotary.
we use a Dremel tool, and what we do is we shape it up, very carefully. We also sometimes use a nail file, to file it down and so forth. Then we make sure that we make sure we don't take off too much, because
Right.
this is the beak is actually tissue underneath, and is actually very sensitive tissue. So we can only go a certain amount. So we just want to take off the dead keratin, that's like your nail.
right.
We don't want to go all the way back into the cuticle.
Right,
So
right. And then I think I want to go directly to this little guy, which, as you corrected me, is a slider,
yeah, this is a pond slider.
a pond slider. And we often see them in the roads in New Jersey, and what happens is they get squished between the road and the edge of the tire, and they squirt out like a little watermelon seed. And once that happens, they often have a fracture in their carapace. And so this is one that you corrected, and just in 30 seconds to a minute, just tell me what you've done here.
Okay, what happened was that this turtle was actually dropped by the owner by mistake. So the shell had a very, very deep, thick crack in it. So what we did is we actually cleaned up the edges of it, of the wound and so forth. We cleaned it up with an antiseptic agent. We actually coated it with actually tin foil, and then on top of that, we put epoxy, and then on top of the epoxy, we put fiberglass. And then we coated it with epoxy, and then eventually coated it again with a waterproof epoxy, because it's a water turtle. This will actually heal up from underneath, but this will take years to heal up. This is probably 3-4 years to before it's fully healed. So this will actually stay on him until it eventually falls off. When it falls off, underneath is going to be fully healed. But we don't remove these; we just leave them on. So now this is something that has to stay on this turtle for the next 3-4 years. So when it's put on, so it's almost like a permanent structure onto him.
Right.
Otherwise he wouldn't be able to function. He wouldn't be able to,
He'd get an
to swim.
infection.
And he gets infections and so forth. And
Right.
these are pets. Some
Right.
of these are pets. So
Right.
we want them. This also works for some of the snapping turtles
Right.
that we see that get hit by cars.
Right.
And,
Right.
and believe it or not, they get hit by cars even though they're mostly in water.
Right.
And then we have to do the same exact thing for them.
Yeah, we have some bad New Jersey drivers, don't we?
Oh, we do.
That's how they get hit by cars. And then I just wanted to bring this up, that Dr. Stuart also does dogs and puppies and cats. So not to be thought of as only a horse or a goat or a chicken or an exotic pet. He also does work with dogs and cats. And I think we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to say that anyone that has any questions about this program or any other program, feel free to contact me at maplewoodAH@comcast.net by my email. Mr. Horton.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Stuart and Dr. Rogers, once again, as usual, for a very informative session. And this has been You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and I want to thank you very much